We are the average of the people we spend the most time with. My name is Matthieu Stefani, and I invite entrepreneurs, athletes, and artists to raise my average and yours. Just before we begin this episode, I'll switch to French for a brief moment to thank my sponsors. It's interesting what you just said is friendship dynamics is something you're working on right now. I mean, it's not friendship, but it's still human dynamics, right?
It's a large part of what we do, and it's the bit that people, and VCs when we started this 10 years ago said, this isn't going to work. You cannot take strangers and turn them into co-founders. And we've now built $15 billion worth of companies through this process. And the reason why it works is because we're so intentional.
15 billion.
Oh, okay. We're so intentional about it. Because I think one of the things that we often see is people stumble into what we call a co-founder of convenience. It's just the person, the friend that happens to be available at the time when they wanted to found something.
I've done that so many times, yeah.
And it doesn't always work out. And there's often all this baggage, right, that's connected to that relationship. And one of the things that we are very obsessive about is, okay, well, how do you create the environment that allows people to have the conversations that are fierce and are about actually what do you want? What are you willing to give up to co-found together? Do you really have the right complementary skills? Do you have the same intentions, the same ambitions? And getting people to have those conversations up front. And then also most importantly, giving them an easy way to get out of a relationship that isn't working. Because typically what you see is somebody finds their co-founder of convenience and then they work together for say 3, 6 months. They know it's not working, but it's too painful to leave. Then they've built something and they have this horrible, messy breakup and who gets to keep what and what happens to the IP. And one of the big reasons why EF works is we make the opportunity cost of getting out of the wrong relationship super, super low. So you're in the wrong relationship. We'll help you identify that. We'll help you break up with your co-founder. And then there's another co-founder literally in the same office as you for you to test the very next day.
But what about the other co-founder?
They also have someone else to test the very next day. We don't see ourselves as an incubator or accelerator. We call ourselves a talent investor.
I mean, everything you say is so true. I've been stuck like maybe for years when I was very young, but yeah, with in good companies actually. The business was good, growing. But then you had one of the co-founders who was like, what the fuck are you doing here? And it's just the guy you're just like, hey, you, what are you doing for the next 5 years? Well, no, nothing. I'm free right now. Yeah. You want to create a company? Yeah, sure. What is it about? Yeah, I don't care.
And this is why, why do early stage companies fail? It's often co-founder breakups. If you have a great co-founding team, it doesn't matter if the idea sucks because you will iterate to the point where you get to a good idea.
Maybe the problem is that in co-founding a business, in creating a business, there is a prenup that is signed super early, and then you're like, okay, we've signed this status, we've signed this agreement. In French, we call it the pacte d'associé, and then after a couple of months, and then. Well, you don't want to divorce after 6 months, right? It's not like an option. It's too late. You've raised money maybe, or you're in business.
We think about breakups in days, not months or weeks. As in, how can you within 48 hours make a call on whether somebody is the right co-founder for you? So the thing we really
how can you make sure in 48 hours?
It's amazing how people do have intuition, but they suppress that intuition because they think. They've watched HBO's Silicon Valley or the Social Network, and they think they have a view of what a co-founder should be like. But the number one thing we get people to focus on is productivity. In this relationship, do I feel like I'm the most productive I've ever been? Now, in some ways, that sounds obvious, right? But it's amazing how many people I speak to, and they're like, oh, yeah, it's been, we haven't made that much progress, but, the next 2 days we'll make progress. And it's like, no, you're just deluding yourself. And I'm always amazed at when you see somebody change co-founding teams, they change as a person. When they get into the right co-founding team, they are a better founder, they're a more productive founder, they're more inspired. And this is kind of why I'm so obsessive about these co-founder dynamics, because it is not only about creating a great business, it's about who do you become as a founder. Who you become as a founder is in relation to who you co-found with, because you will become stronger in the areas that they're weaker, you will become weaker in the areas they're stronger. But yeah, we always push on this idea of, productivity is traction for teams. If you're super productive, keep going, work it out. If you're not, can it immediately.
when do you know it's not the right person? What are the signs?
In the very, very early days, it's amazing how coming up with an idea, that idea generation, can be a real tripping point, but quite a hard one to understand. So one of the mistakes we see people make is so let's say we're co-founding together. And you have a couple of ideas you're interested in. I have a couple of ideas that I'm interested in. And so it feels in some way, the obvious thing to do is that we'll just work on all of those ideas simultaneously. And one of them will come out as the front runner. Now, that's actually a terrible idea. And the reason why it's a terrible idea is that you're probably actually holding on to your ideas and pushing your ideas harder. I'm pushing my ideas harder. And so we're not actually having the hard conversation about what is the idea that we're both deeply excited by. And also, if you're running ideas in parallel, you aren't actually deep diving on any one specific idea. So you're slowing down the information gathering process. So what we always push founders to do is pick one idea, one starting point that you both agree on, and then speed run that as fast as possible to the point where you don't think there's anything else there, and then either change to a new idea or iterate that idea or change your co-founder. But I think that's one of the mistakes we definitely see is where people are like, cool, we're trying 4 ideas simultaneously. And it feels like you're mitigating risk, but actually you're really significantly increasing the risk in your co-founder relationship.
How important is the ID paternity, the ownership? I've created a like what we call the founder studio, a startup studio, right? And each time it was even harder when those startups were booming, like because at some point we had probably 20-30% of the company as a startup studio, and the CEO didn't have the idea, and it was a drama each time. How does it work at Entrepreneurs First?
So our job is to help you come up with an idea and help you as a co-founding pair to come up with your idea, the idea that you are most interested in. In the early days of EF, now 10 years ago, we did try giving people ideas, and what we found is that they just didn't feel the level of agency or ownership over those ideas. And so when times got tough, they would flake out. It wasn't the thing that they really loved. And so what we push is this idea of what is your edge? What is the thing that you have previously invested time, energy, headspace into learning about, working on? That should be your starting point, and use that as a starting point to understand, what is the space that you can dominate. I think the idea paternity thing, who gets to own an idea? One of the reasons why I think it's so important that our companies get exposure to the US, and now we take all of our companies to the US. One of the reasons why is that the competition, the level of competition there, and understanding that basically there are a bunch of companies that have an idea that is pretty much 95% identical to yours, makes you better. It forces you to understand how you're going to differentiate. And it forces you to be as productive as possible, because that can be one of the ways you win. So I think sometimes people shy away from the US because it is seen as too competitive. But actually the reason to go is for the competition. The competition will make you better. It will help you refine your idea. So I think, ideas are 10 a penny. What really matters is execution.
So you don't ever come with ideas. You don't sometimes come with and say, you should do this.
No.
Do you do the opposite? Do you sometimes say, oh no, this idea is a piece of crap?
Not quite the terminology we use, but yes, we do. But it's really, really hard. As an investor, you are looking for the contrarian ideas, right? You're looking for the non-obvious ideas. And so you do have to be really open-minded to what a good idea looks like.
What is the best non-obvious idea you've invested in?
Best non-obvious idea. We've invested in some, we've done a lot of deep tech investing, and we don't always get it right. In 2018, we put a bunch of money into quantum computing. It was just too early for quantum computing startups at that stage, and particularly for our model. But the nice thing about our model is that because we're, investing small amounts of money, we want to try and invest in anything that sounds sort of even vaguely interesting. But again, the bit that we go back to is if we believe in the founder, we will take a risk on the idea, even if we don't love it. I was recently proved wrong by a founder that was building an edtech, and edtech is not a space that is one that I love. It is a really, really hard space to build a company at scale with a good business model.
Apart from Duolingo, there's like no freaking amazing ed tech like worldwide.
And again, that's, it's a B2C model rather than selling to schools. And we had one founder recently who was completely obsessed with the space. And the first iteration of the idea was kind of okay, but over the last 12 months, he's turned it into something super, super interesting and something that I would never have guessed. From the first time that we met him, started working with him, I would not have guessed that he would get to where he is today. But again, that's why we invest in the people, not the ideas, because he is fantastic. He's such an exceptional individual, such an exceptional team. And it's that level of customer obsession and biased action that meant he was able to get to an idea that actually now I think is going to be huge.
You know what? I have a lot of frustration around edtech. Actually, I do. We've had that talk with several people because I've. So, how old are your kids? Can we?
They are 3 and 5.
3 and 5. Okay.
Two
so
boys.
at 5, like probably 5. Yeah, 5. Unless most of the people around tech, you don't want them to get any screen at all. But at some point, for the second one, he will get at 5 because the first one will get them at but you just tell them, look, you can do this on the tablets, but it's only math, right? And you get this good math application, and it's fun, and it helps them count and learn mathematics. And you're like, this is freaking great, right? But I haven't found like on every single topics like geography, history, math, French, English. Well, actually, Duolingo is working quite well, even for kids. But
oh, really?
Yeah. You can be quite early, but so yeah, I think there's something to crack in this area.
It is going to change, but the school system in any country is going to take a long, long time to change. So yeah, I think the kind of direct-to-consumer model for edtech is interesting, and we will see big change in the next couple of years. But I think to actually change the school system, it's going to take a while.
Yeah,
there's a lot of legacy people, infrastructure, beliefs that are going to take a while to shift.
Let's not open the AI topic right now, but I think AI is going to change a lot of things in that area. But if we want to get back to the founders interaction. So you help them find their co-founder, which can be like a team of 2, 3. Is there a magical number?
The magic number is 2. So yeah, there are a bunch of examples of, large co-founding teams, but it's typically where people have known each other for a long time. If you are co-founding with someone who is a stranger, our strong recommendation is a team of 2.
Is it based on numbers? I mean, what are you saying? But because 3, I mean, sounds somehow interesting because you'll get a balance.
Everyone wants to be in a team of 3. My push on that would be it radically increases relationship complexity. And so if you don't have a deep relationship previously, introducing a third person radically increases the communication overhead, the alignment overhead. And that's particularly true if you're trying to develop an idea together. If one person has an idea and is building a team around them, that can work. But if you're trying to co-create an idea, it's very, very hard. The other thing I would push on is the most expensive decision you will ever make is having a co-founder, because they're going to take, 50% of your company. If you have
Really? Can it be 30?
Well, it depends what your view is on that person. As in, do you see that person as somebody who is going to co-create this company with you for the next 10 years? If yes, the fact that you've been working on it for 2 months before them or had, a year's more work experience is not going to justify that extra 20% that you get.
Sorry, I interrupted. Yeah. But it's important. It was my next question, but yeah. But,
it's so expensive to have a co-founder that adding a third co-founder, whenever we see somebody adding a third co-founder, the question we always ask is, couldn't they be a first employee? Like, you're looking at a radically different level of equity compensation for a co-founder versus a first employee.
Very interesting.
And so my push is always like, is it actually worth the cost? And it's amazing how when you actually put it like that, often often people don't believe that's the case. The reason people often end up in 3 is they just don't want to have a hard conversation. There's a hard conversation where they know that one person is probably superfluous and they're just trying to be nice. As a founder of a company, one of the things you'll learn very quickly is that much of the work you have to do is going to be hard conversations with people, hard conversations with team members, with investors, whatever it may be. And so actually, flexing that muscle from the start and making sure you set yourself up for success with the right number of co-founders is a good way to start.